Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to UCD Smurfit School. I'm just going to give it a moment while everybody actually joins the webinar, and then when we have everybody in, we'll kick off. So we'll start very soon. Thank you. Great. So it looks like we have everybody in. So I'm going to start the agenda. Good evening, everyone. You're all very welcome to UCD Smurfit School tonight on such a beautiful evening. Thank you for taking time to join us. My name is Edel O'Leary, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the MBA programs here at Smurfit School. This is actually our fifth open evening of this recruitment cycle, and I hope you have actually managed to join us previously and that you're coming back to hear about this particular aspect of the program. There are many aspects to understanding the MBA, so we try to cover a different topic at every event. And this evening, we are going to focus on the global aspects of the MBA program, both in terms of the classroom and the international study tours. I'm joined this evening by a number of my colleagues. Assistant Professor Luca Pistilli, who is the co-director of the MBA programs, the Executive MBA Program Manager, Sinead Cunningham, and the MBA Admissions Manager, Mairead Mulvey, who will actually speak to you this evening about the admissions process and how to apply. So good evening, guys, and you're very welcome. And thank you so much for coming on to help support this webinar this evening. My three colleagues will be answering questions via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So not chat, the Q&A function. And I'd like to encourage you to submit any program or admissions related questions as we go to the team. So they are on standby to answer for you. And the reason I say that is because we have a stellar panel organized for you this evening. Current full-time MBA student Dan, EMBA alumna Mary, and two full-time MBA alumni, Kumuta and Luke. And we want to give a significant portion of our time this evening to chatting with them about their global experiences on the program. And then you're going to also be welcome to actually post any questions to them that you'd like to know about the program itself. And that's always a very popular piece. So we'll try and save as much time as we can. And we hope to have you finished by 8:10 at the very latest. Great. So let's get at it then. Let's get started. So there are probably a couple of questions at the front of your mind that have brought you here this evening. Is an MBA right for me? Which MBA format should I choose? And of course, the answer to those questions is highly individual. But what I can tell you is that a typical MBA candidate wants to accelerate their career within an existing organization, to move into a new profession, perhaps, or indeed industry, or simply move country or continent. And in what is an increasingly competitive employment market, an MBA serves to future-proof your credentials and income potential over the longer term. But whatever your motivation, it is important to say that an MBA is a globally recognized qualification. Careers have become increasingly global, with many professionals working for multinational companies or in international teams or locations. But as we all know, greater global connectedness comes with complexity and uncertainty, and making skills like critical thinking, cultural intelligence, and personal resilience even more important than ever. Regardless of where you're located, a global outlook positions business professionals to succeed and have a positive impact in their careers and organizations across cultures and geographies. An MBA remains the preeminent postgraduate business qualification to deliver on these crucial skills. But not all MBA programs are created equally. So why then the Smurfit MBA? A key question you should ask is, how does the school and specifically the program rank in a global environment? And the answer to both of those questions is very highly. The school became Ireland's first world-ranked school by the Financial Times in 2000, and we were the first school in Ireland to receive a Triple Crown accreditation from the awarding bodies in the US, the UK, and Europe back in 2002. So to put that in context, there are just over 100 Triple Crown schools globally out of almost 15,000 business schools. So we are in a very elite group. The school is a founding member of GNAM, which is the Global Network of Advanced Management, a partnership of international business schools initiated by Yale School of Management. And I'm going to refer to this again later. From a program point of view, our flagship MBA programs are consistently ranked by the Financial Times and QS in the top 100 business schools globally. This year, we were the only Irish business school to feature in the full-time MBA rankings. As one of the oldest programs in Europe, we have a track record and reputation for delivering an outstanding program with a significant reputation. Our history also means that we have by far the largest MBA global alumni base, with an active and supportive network of over 4,000 MBA alumni and 100,000 business alumni. So, what makes the Smurfit MBA unique? At Smurfit School, we embed a global outlook into every aspect of our MBA to equip our students with the skills to navigate the evolving business landscape and to cover all of the major disciplines from finance to marketing to strategy and HR. Our curriculum is updated on a regular basis to include emerging disciplines such as AI, digital transformation, data analytics. From internationally focused case studies to faculty with global experience, students gain insights into how businesses operate across cultures and economies. Importantly, our location in Ireland, with its thriving business ecosystem and vibrant alumni community worldwide, offers our students the opportunity to network with senior executives in leading global companies and have meaningful experiences through applied projects, mentoring opportunities, and guest lectures. I'm actually now going to focus on the global business experiences that our students have at Smurfit School. I'm going to focus firstly on the Global Network for Advanced Management, also known by us as GNAM. It comprises 32 leading business schools from diverse regions, countries, cultures, and economies, and each contributing business school leverages each other's skills. We foster connections and we share perspectives on solutions to complex issues and societal challenges. Each school specializes in an area or a subject. MBA students in UCD Smurfit School have the opportunity to engage with partner schools on a number of occasions over the course of the program. MBA students in UCD Smurfit School have the opportunity to travel overseas to a GNAM partner school, such as Yale, University of California, Berkeley, or the University of British Columbia for 1 week during their program. Students can also access a full range of intensive online courses offered by partner schools, focusing on emerging trends relevant for business professionals. The benefit it offers our students is to access a broad set of meaningful experiences in a globally enhanced network and building opportunities to network amongst those students. These are co-curricular activities, are non-modules on the MBA program itself. Doing business in international markets is a module on our program. And even for those working in domestically focused companies, having a global perspective is a critical advantage. In today's interconnected business world, few businesses operate in isolation, whether it's through global supply chains, international clients, technological disruptions, or emerging market trends. Understanding these dynamics helps business professionals anticipate challenges, seize opportunities, and make informed strategic decisions. The Doing Business in International Markets is designed to immerse students in a business culture that is unfamiliar. Led by Professor Patrick Gibbons, this week-long module includes cultural and market briefings and exposure to a range of businesses. This year and last year, Professor Gibbons chose Singapore as our destination. Both full-time MBAs and EMBAs traveled together, and the study tour allows for significant networking and some time for relaxation. Thinking about business internationally changes our students' vantage point, enhancing their understanding and appreciation of the ways to work together to create value for their organizations, the business ecosystem, and for society at large. The International Consulting Project is a hands-on exposure to a real business problem with a client outside of Ireland. Working in teams, students receive a real brief from their client and work collaboratively, drawing on all learnings from the MBA to provide a solution to that client, and ultimately culminates with a presentation. Led by Professor Karan Sampar on the executive side of the program and Professor Kathy O'Reilly on the full-time MBA, over 60 students will travel together to complete their week-long in-company visit this year. Both Karan and Kathy provide in-depth briefing before travel, and work commences remotely in Dublin before we arrive at our destination. On site, both professors are assisted further by Professor Patrick Gibbons and Associate Dean Federica Passalia in mentoring and guiding students daily in their work. So, how do we fit all of this into our program? On the full-time MBA, our GNAM Immersion Week is in mid-October, when we are on a study break. Our GNAM short network courses vary, but tend to run from January to April. And our DBIM module, for example, Singapore, happens in early March, and the International Consulting Project happens in late May. On the Executive MBA, the GNAM short network courses are open to students twice during their program, once in year 2 and again once in year 1 and again in year 2 from January to April. Executive MBAs also have a choice of travel. The International Consulting Project is offered in late May in year 1, and should they not wish to choose to travel in year 1, their next opportunity to travel with us is in March of year 2. We do ask that you travel with us at least once during the program. The GNAM Global Immersion Week is then offered in June of year 2. Now, I know that is a lot to take in, and I will come back to it in detail when we speak to our panel about their global experiences. But for now, I'm going to pass to my colleague, Mairead Mulvey, who's going to speak to us about the admissions process. Thanks a million, Mairead.
Thank you, Adele. So my name is Mairead Mulvey. I can see from our participants tonight, I've talked to a number of you before. So for those of you who I haven't spoken to, I'm the MBA admissions manager for both programs. So I can tell you all about the differences between the two programs, and often people come to me. I had one lady who's here this evening who was emailing me earlier to ask my advice on what program should she consider based on her background and her experience so far, and what she wants to achieve, or how quickly she wants to achieve an MBA, put it that way. So we'll just go into the differences between the two programs now, please, Adele. So as you can see, which MBA program will work for you? These are basically the key differences between the full-time MBA and the executive MBA, which is the part-time MBA. So the full-time MBA is suitable for people who enjoy a really immersive learning experience, which a lot of our full-time MBAs do. They want to dedicate themselves for a year. One year, it's an intense year, it's full on, but it flies by, and you have your MBA qualification at the end of it quite quickly, I suppose. I mean, some of the full-time MBA programs around the world, there's one in Europe that I came across recently, that it's full-time, but it lasts for 2 years and 4 months. So that's a very, long commitment, both financially and, lifestyle wise, in every context, really. So we have designed an MBA that's intense, it's full on, but you get it within a year. And as most of you probably know, because you're here this evening, the Smurfit MBA is the only MBA in Ireland at the moment that's ranked in the top 100 MBAs globally, which we're very proud of, and is testament to, the quality of teaching, our alumni and what they've done subsequently, and the overall reputation of our MBA. And it's, I suppose a lot of people say to me when I ask why do you want to do it, or why have you applied, they'll tell me one of the reasons is because of the brand, I suppose, associated with Smurfit and the international reputation that our MBA has. So, as I said, it's a fully immersive learning experience, and that's how it works over the year. The class is slightly different. They differ between the two MBAs. The full-time MBA is predominantly composed of our international students, because they can travel to Ireland and they can get a visa to study. So we have a diverse, I suppose, cohort of students coming from lots of different countries. I think we have 8 different countries at the moment in our current class, including some of our domestic students, obviously, as well. But we do that intentionally, I suppose, to give people the broadest possible experience in terms of learning from each other what it's like, through people's experience, I suppose, what it's like to work in different markets from different sectors and different countries, and just give the broadest experience that we can whilst our students are here, and enrich their learning experience. A lot of people do the full-time MBA as well because they want to pivot their career. They're doing, they've been in a particular sector or a particular job for quite a while, and they want to change. They want to make a dramatic change, if that makes any sense. So they literally draw a line in the sand. Obviously, they take their experience and their expertise that they have to date, and they do an MBA, and they gain, they mightn't have decided even what they want to do, but that's the beauty, I suppose, of the MBA, because it's so broad, and it gives our students insight and understanding, I suppose, of what they potentially might like to do, what area they might like to go into. They might be very good at something, or find out that they're very good at something that they didn't realize before. It could be digital marketing, or they could have a real interest in corporate governance that they were never even aware of before. And then we try and help them create a pathway, I suppose, to pursue a career in that discipline that they might have decided on, or it could be a couple of different areas. As I've already mentioned, it's an intensive year, intensive learning. We expect our students to be engaged, to be committed, to work hard. Not that you can't enjoy yourself. There's lots of fun and crack, as we say in Ireland, as Adele has just mentioned there. Even in terms of going on the trips, there's a lot of fun there to be had. But to just overall enjoy the experience, but be serious and be committed while you're doing it. The average age of our full-time MBA students tends to be in and around 30, and the work experience that they have tends to be about 7 years. Now that's the full-time MBA. The differences in the executive MBA, it's mainly online. However, our students are required to be on campus for 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday, approximately every 4 weeks. And they're intense days. They run from half eight in the morning to maybe 6:30 in the evening. But they're also fun days, if I'm being honest, and the students tell me that anecdotally. They really enjoy coming onto campus because they work a lot in project groups over the time that they're online, and then they enjoy meeting each other. And there's lots of, I'm sure the panel later will testify to the fact there's very much a collegiate environment, and friendship groups form, really strong bonds form within people, so they basically enjoy meeting each other. The dates for the campus dates where you're present for campus are on our website. They're in place. They won't change over the next 2 years. So you can go into the website, you can go into curriculum, and you'll see the dates that you're required to be on campus for the next 2 years. So it's you know, it's structured, it's organized, and it doesn't deviate from that. It's ideal for independent learners because you will be doing a fair amount of work in your own time, by yourself, or you'd be online. However, not entirely, because you will always be working with your colleagues as well. We recommend the Executive MBA for senior professionals. Basically the class comes from everywhere. I mean, everywhere in Ireland particularly. So it's not, sometimes people ask me, is it just people who are based in Dublin? Absolutely not. They come from all over Ireland. They come from different countries as well. If it, you know, suits them that they can get over to Ireland for a couple of days every month. We have one gentleman that's coming from Sweden this year, and I see he's actually he's on our webinar this evening. So good evening, Sebastian. And we encourage that because, again, going back to that whole diversity piece, where even though the Executive MBA is predominantly domestic students because you need to be based in Ireland, we still try and create as much diversity as possible. And this year in particular, our year ones, we have, I think, 25% of our students are originally from a different country and they've come to live and work in Ireland, which is a reflection, I suppose, of how Ireland is changing. But that basically creates such, you know, an enriched learning experience for all our students because they're getting lots of different perspectives in terms of, again, different countries, how business is done, cultural mores, and different perspectives. And that just, everybody learns from each other. We also curate that class, well, both classes, but this class as well, in terms of people, you know, we want our students to come from different sectoral backgrounds and industries and types of roles, because there's a big emphasis on peer-to-peer learning in both programs. And if you've heard me before, you've probably heard me say this, but if you're in a project group and you're an accountant and there's 3 other accountants in the project group, you will absolutely learn from your colleagues. But there will be a ceiling in terms of what you will learn because you're all kind of coming from the same background and you tend to think similarly. However, if you have an accountant, an engineer, an operations person, and maybe a doctor, you will get a much broader, deeper experience in terms of all those different perspectives, all those different insights, all that experience that those people have to bear in terms of shaping how you approach problems or challenges. And just, you know, it just really adds to the value of the MBA, and that's very intentional. So it's always, I always like to point that out to people, that you learn so much from your colleagues and from your peers. And people would often say to me, look, I'm a doctor and I work in a hospital and I meet nurses and other doctors, and obviously the public, but in a work environment, you know, I'd never get to meet an accountant or, you know, commercial person or just somebody, an engineer. And that's what you get to do on the MBA. There's that whole networking opportunity whereby you get to meet people and learn from people that you wouldn't naturally meet in your work, you know, your daily work lives. And people really benefit, our students really benefit from that. Just to close that off, the average age is 36, 37. The average work experience is about 11 years, sometimes 12. And as I said, that's 2 years part-time. Thank you, Adele. So just very quickly, the criteria in terms of how to apply: you apply online, you need a university degree in any discipline, it doesn't matter. For the full-time MBA, you need a minimum of 3 years professional experience. We ideally look for 5. We need 5. You know, the value of doing an MBA is all the students have experience, okay? So they can draw on their experience that they've had to date. They have learned from what they've done before. They've experienced what it's like to work in an organization, to, you know, problem solve, to manage change, to go through difficult periods, essentially. And we need people with experience. It's not just academic, it's what you've done, what you've experienced, what you can bring to the class, that we very much look at the students in a holistic way. So the more experience you have, in many ways for us, the better it is for the overall class. So we will consider applicants with 3 years professional experience, but really we prefer people with at least 5. For the executive MBA, we need people to have at least 7. Potentially, we will consider somebody with a little bit less, but it would want to be, really impressive experience, essentially, and we look at it on a case-to-case basis, essentially. You do need, for the full-time MBA, a GMAT or an executive assessment test. There's been questions there this evening that I'm happy to answer at the end about GMAT waivers, which occasionally we provide, but there's criteria attached to that. So for the moment, I would say to do the full-time MBA, you do need to complete a GMAT or an executive assessment. You need 2 completed recommendation forms. It's really straightforward. You just put in the email address of your recommender or referee, I suppose is a better word, and it gets sent directly to them. They fill it out and it uploads directly then onto our system. If you're coming from a non-English speaking country where English is the native language, you need to do a language test unless you've lived in a country where the language is English for 5 years, or you've done your degree through English in an English speaking country. You just need to complete the application form and you need to provide a current CV. So it's really straightforward. And then the final part of the process is, when we've appraised your application, and if you're successful in terms of going forward, we invite you for interview. And you could, either meet me or Adele or Sinead or some of our other colleagues that work on the MBA. And that's really an opportunity to discuss your application and tell us why you want to do an MBA, what you hope to achieve as an MBA graduate. Why do you want to come to Smurfit? Have you spoken to anybody else who's been in Smurfit, and what has their experiences been? Have you learned, basically? And then we're obviously available to answer any of your questions. I'll just finish off by saying we obviously do have a number of scholarships. There you can see them on the website. I prefer to talk about scholarships individually to people because they have different criteria in terms of who they're applicable to and different ways of adjudicating them. But I am more than happy to talk to people individually about that. So please do reach out. And everyone is considered for a scholarship as part of the application process as well. However, as you can see there at the bottom of the slide, the deadline for the scholarships is the 30th of April. So if you're thinking of applying for the MBA and you're also thinking, I'd like a scholarship or a partial bursary or, whatever is available, please make your applications as soon as possible so as you can be considered for the scholarships, because that will be the closing date. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions later. Thank you, Adele.
Thanks, Mairead. That was fantastic. So we're going to move on to our panel discussion. So I'm going to ask our panelists, Kamuta and Dan and Luke and Mary, to turn on their cameras. And I am going to make a very awkward attempt, I think, at stopping screen share. So hopefully I don't turn off the whole Zoom in the meantime. Here we go. We got everybody there. Super. Lovely. And I am going to close this down. And then I'm going to bring my Zoom over towards me so that I can see everybody in focus. There we go. Now I'm looking at everyone. Great. Thank you so much. Lovely. Guys, can I ask you then, if you don't mind, if you can possibly just introduce yourselves very briefly, just tell us what program you studied and what year you graduated, or if you're still a current student, and just very briefly, maybe what sector you're working in. That'd be super. And let me see, I'll go one by one. At the top left of my screen is Mary.
Great. Thanks, Adele. My name is Mary Gordon. I'm a lawyer by trade and I currently work as the Deputy Registrar in the Institute of Bankers, and I graduated in December 2024.
Great. Thank you, Mary. And the next person I can see is Dan.
Right. Hi, everyone from sunny Ireland. Full-time current MBA student here. Previously, I was working at Facebook for Meta in product operations and data science. And yeah, it's great to be here.
Good. And Kumuta.
Hi everyone, I'm Kumuta, a proud alumni of the MBA class of 2024. And currently I'm working as a strategy manager with a Canadian tech company, TELUS Digital.
Excellent. And Luke.
Hello, everybody. My name is Luke Byrne. I work in the media industry. I'm currently strategy planning editor with the Business Post, which is the business newspaper here. And I graduated from the MBA in December 2024, so last year.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Don't be afraid to leave your microphones on if you like, because this is going to be a chat. So just come in anytime and give us your views and your opinions on things, which I know you have many, which is great. Super. So listen, Luke, I'm going to go to you first because I was looking back at your file there before I asked you to come on, because I see that you managed to get as far as San Francisco. So can you tell us how you got to there and what you were doing there and what you studied?
Yeah, well, as soon as I saw San Francisco on the list of the GNAM places to go, I got my name straight down for it. Partly because I'd always wanted to visit California, but also because the course there was just really exciting. So what I studied there was a course in entrepreneurship and venture capital in the Bay Area, and there was kind of two sides to that course. One was sort of looking at how venture capitalists look at valuing companies and the sort of companies that they invest in, how they invest in them, why they invest in them, how that whole sort of ecosystem works. And then the other side of the coin was sort of setting up your own business, how to pitch to venture capital. And a big part of it was a project in a sort of strategic flip. So if you were working in a startup that maybe was struggling to find success, how would you look at the assets of the company and maybe make a sort of strategic flip and pitch yourself in a new sort of light? So the course was quite intensive. It was sort of 8 to 9 hour days, but it was absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite experiences of the MBA. And they introduced us to venture capitalists in San Francisco, introduced us to startup entrepreneurs. At one point, I was having lunch with the project lead, one of the guys who launched the Google Maps project, who had since gone into venture capital. So met some really interesting people, and yeah, fabulous experience.
Great. Oh, super. Thanks for that overview. And Kumuta, did you get a chance to actually do GNAM Week?
Yes, so I actually had the opportunity to join it, and I did mine in ESMT Berlin. It was obviously during the first trimester as well, so that was October as soon as I joined the MBA. And I chose to do it in sustainable finance, coming from a background where I worked in the energy sector. That was something that stood out for me. And it was definitely a really good experience, an enriching one. And I think what really stood out was the global cohort there. It was filled with MBAs and MBAs from almost every corner of the world. And it was the classroom diversity as well. It brought so much depth to the conversations we had. And it was really refreshing as well to see how others viewed it, like sustainability from regional lenses. But I think what made it special really beyond the classroom was the network for life that we built. And we're all still connected on WhatsApp and continue to share insights and opportunities. So I think it was a really good, wholesome experience.
Great. Thanks very much, Kumuta. So that's the GNAM Week. And then, Dan, you're actually doing a short network online course, which are very nicely termed SNOCs. So just in case anyone thinks we're gone nuts, I know it's a terrible sounding word, but tell us about your short network online course with GNAM.
It rhymes anyway. So
Yeah.
Anyway, great to hear from you, Luca and Kamura. Almost I miss traveling now, but all the assignments. SNOC is such a great opportunity. So I'm currently doing the Natural Capital course with Yale School of Management, and it's such a great opportunity to do it in parallel with a full-time MBA. So this is a 5 months course, and it has everything energy related, climate, water, very much aligned to my areas of interest. I'm looking to transition from tech to the energy space. It's a global course, so you get the chance to work with people all over the world from top schools. You work on various projects, case studies, like we did a case study on a mining company in Brazil or on coffee trading, super interesting. And also what I found great is you get an early heads up in November with all the programs, part of the SNOC program, and you're able to choose the program that mostly aligns with your career or your future interests. Such a great opportunity.
Oh, great.
Definitely, it keeps you busy. So
Keeps you busy. Good, good, good. Thanks a million, Dan. And Mary, I think if there was gold stars to be handed out for anyone who could get the most out of GNAM, I think you have to get it. Am I right in remembering that you did 2 SNOCs during your time with us?
That's right, Adele. And they were quite the experience,
Okay.
I have to say. So the first SNOC I did was in Seoul University, Business University, the National University there with Woo Jun Kim. And that, I have to say, was an opportunity I absolutely jumped at because it was looking at business ethics, which is my area of research, and conference presentation. And to say it was an eclectic experience is an understatement. It really opened my eyes, particularly to my propensity to optimism, because I said yes immediately without realizing it was on in the middle of the night. So I would stay up until 12 and our lectures would go from midnight until 4 a.m. for a duration of in and around 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, which ending with the presentation in the middle of the night, which I'm sure my neighbors reveled in as we talked about tunneling in Toshiba in South Korea in the middle of the night. So it was absolutely brilliant. My attitude for the MBA was say yes and see what happens next. And Seoul University, certainly, to say it opened my eyes was an understatement, with the professor having gained his PhD in America. He was a real character. And like a lot of my MBA experience, I was Googling the terms that were being used under the table, hoping that nobody would notice. As we were talking about tunneling when I first entered the lecture, and I wondered, had I entered the wrong Zoom? But I had not. It was a brilliant experience, Adele, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody. Despite the early mornings and the late nights, it was a super experience.
So that's a really good point, Mary, because it's important to point out to people that because these universities are located globally, pay good attention to the timetable.
Indeed. Don't do what I did, essentially.
Yeah. And then they normally happen it's about once a week, isn't it? You join.
Yes. And then for some of the SNOCs, the first one, there was a time when there were 2 per week towards the end, because we would prepare with our groups. But like Kamuta said, I'm still in touch with my 2 colleagues from the SNOC, the first SNOC, that we did a presentation with. So we'll often ping each other opportunities, articles that we're mutually interested in. And one of my colleagues on the SNOC was in Berlin Business School, which Kamuta went to do her GNAM. So it's a very small parish, and it's amazing how you cross paths with people from different institutions within the network. So that was really quite eye-opening as well.
Great. And did you squeeze in a week then also as part of the week immersion? Did you travel?
Yes, so for the GNAM, I traveled to Berkeley, and I actually met Luke in Singapore, who highly recommended Berkeley. And then I ended up going to Berkeley and cycling over that bridge, which I have to say, with my fear of heights, I still shudder at the thought of it. But
another experience.
Another experience. I seem to have done an awful lot of heights. I ended up doing a cable car in Singapore, which again, I'm not sure I'd recommend to my height phobic friends. But I did the GNAM in Berkeley, and that was without question the highlight of my MBA, the best experience.
Is that exactly the same topic that Luke did?
No, I did equity, leadership, and diversity, which is my area of interest. I tracked on the SNOC, the GNAM, not so much the doing business and global, but I tracked the equity, ethics and leadership type modules, because they're my area of interest. So I very much tracked them. So I was quite biased towards those topics, and was lucky enough that the GNAM in Berkeley was based on equity and diversity and leadership. So I just got lucky in a sense with the GNAM.
Great, super. So I'm going to move on now from GNAM, just for our audience. I'm going to speak about the UCD module, doing business in international markets. And Dan, you and I have just most recently, and Sinead, returned from Singapore. Can you tell us a little bit about how that whole week roles and what we get up to, and you can leave out all the fun stuff because we don't want to hear too much about that. But tell us
I
how
was
the
about to
academic,
start with those.
yeah, tell us how the academic piece goes, both in terms of before
Yes.
you travel and then coming back.
Yes, yes, definitely. To be honest, this was the highlight of the program for me so far, and there were many other highlights, but this definitely stood out. But before I get there, yes, we were briefed well in advance. We had a deep dive into the country of choice, Singapore, to understand more about the environment or what's happening there from economical, political, social, and so on, which was great for us to prepare ahead. And also, we started our journal to set our expectations in advance.
Mhm.
But definitely, those expectations were far exceeded for me. I traveled before for work, for as a tourist, but I never experienced such a trip as the one in Singapore because we had the chance to meet real companies and to understand the business environment there. We've been to the Irish Embassy. I don't know if you want me to go through those
Oh, tell us
companies.
a little bit about who we saw.
Yes. So we even saw a company, Capital Land, that actually manages the energy for their buildings. I was like, my luck, because that's my area of interest. But we've been to Changi Airport, we've been to Western Robotics, we've been to Maersk, which is amazing because they have a lot of scarcity in terms of land and the way they build the warehouses. And anyway, in the interest of time,
Yeah.
we got a glimpse of all the businesses there, and we also understand, how they approach development in Singapore, and it's been great.
Yeah.
Just to mention that we got an overview of the logistics prior to the trip, and we got support during the trip as well, and we got a view of the Singapore as a city as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
been
And
amazing.
you've finished writing up your journal for Pat and you've submitted it already. I know you.
I
You're a top
did.
student.
I did. Yes, I did.
Good
On
man.
time. On time.
So Kamut and Luke, we happen to have traveled together to Singapore as well. So it's probably important to say that we don't always go to Singapore. It just happens to be that it was 2 years that we went to Singapore. But prior to that, we've been to many other locations as well. Have you guys anything you'd like to add about the experience of doing business in international markets that maybe didn't cover, just anything different on that topic?
Yeah,
Luke, Mary, whatever.
Do you want
Yeah.
to answer, Kamura, or?
go ahead, Luke.
Well, one of the things that kind of, as a journalist, one of the things that struck me was the sort of the presence of the Irish companies there. I always kind of have a nose for what Irish people are doing abroad, because it's always of interest to people back home. But one of the companies we visited, I don't know, Adele, did you visit them this year as well? But we visited Kerry Group, and I was fascinated by, they have a project, an AI project, that they use in terms of how they develop their product pipeline and that kind of thing. But obviously, AI being the big thing, it's one of those things that was sort of a bit nebulous until you go and you see a company doing something with it in real life. And it was very interesting to me that an Irish company was doing something so innovative with the technology. So I really like that sort of aspect of it, and we were working a little bit on an AI strategy in my own job at the moment, and I kind of took away a lot from that as to how they sort of implemented technology in their solving some of their problems.
So we didn't go back to Kerry this year. We actually went to one of their big competitors, a group called Olam Foods. And coincidentally, one of the senior executives there is a lady, an Irish lady, and she hosted us. And I have to say, equally, it's impressive and some, really interesting things going on. Absolutely enormous global company in terms of food, raw materials. So also very, very good. And amazing to see an Irish lady in such a fantastic position there as well. Very impressive lady. But yeah, so shall we move on, guys, and talk about the international consulting project then, just to give people a feel for it before we start to move on to some general program questions. So it's very different. Mary, I'll come to you first.
Absolutely.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about how the international consulting project actually works? So how the whole thing comes together.
Absolutely, Adele. So I did the international consulting trip in year one. We went to Prague, and it was quite different to the Singapore trip. The Singapore trip was that complete immersion, the cultural piece. I travel a lot with work as well, so that was quite interesting for me to go back within a different context. But when we went to Prague on the consulting trip, we were briefed before we went. We hit the ground running. We were in contact with the company, and we had the privilege of working with a company called Fortrans, which were a fintech company using AI for factoring. So essentially, I'm not a finance person, you'll find that out quite quickly. Essentially, they were looking to financing small companies that needed finance quite quickly. And for me, again, the experimental side of my personality came out, and I said, right, I'm not a finance person. I'm going to do a consulting trip in a finance company. So that was hugely interesting. And the week that we visited them to consult, they actually struck a massive deal with Allianz around risk and governance. And it was hugely interesting that they asked us to consult with them with regards to entering a new market in Europe. And our recommendation was that they enter Spain, and hey ho, they entered Spain the year after. So we like to think that we had some influence after our week, but it was a busy week. It was a working week. And for me, it certainly whetted the appetite with regards to a consultancy element to my practice. And I know, Kamuta, you understand that as well as part probably as your role. But for me, consulting was not something I had on my radar. And it was flagged earlier on that you find that you might like something or that you're good at something whilst you do the MBA. And for me, it was a light bulb moment of I quite like the advisory element of consulting rather than the business development side. And I learned that about myself and about my work that I enjoy whilst I was in Prague. So it was a working week, but we got really lucky with the company that we met. They were hugely sociable. So it was a very balanced week. And it really was a great week to commence the travel with the MBA.
Yeah, great. And great timing as well, I would think, for
Yes,
you on the program, that it kind of brings together
absolutely.
a lot of the strands of the modules that you've done so far.
100%.
Yeah.
And Adele, a great part of the trip for us as part of the executive MBA was it was very much a gelling experience for the class, because whilst we had the 2 days together per month or so, and I know that the timetable we had online, we had in person, it really gelled us as a group. It was the first time we had traveled together as a group, and we all still talk about it. We actually met up there last week, a gang of us. So we all still talk about the trip, because
Great.
we'll say a huge cohort of the group went on that trip. So it was a gelling experience for the executive MBA group.
Great. And Kamuta, I'll come to you as a full-timer on the international consulting project. So for you, it's kind of coming close to almost the end of the program, in that it happens in late May, early June, and then you're starting to actually head towards the capstone. So tell us a little bit about what it felt like for you. You and I were together in Lisbon, I believe.
Yes, we did, Adele. And I mean, it was my first time in Lisbon, and that was June. So it was nice to escape the cold Irish weather and out there for some sun. But, you know, just chiming on as to what Mary said, it was a similar experience, a full work week. And well, with my team, at least, we worked with a company called Strong Step. It was a Portuguese software consulting firm, and they were looking to develop a go-to-market strategy for the Irish market. And I'd say that was a good hands-on experience for me, for someone who came from a different background, looking to pivot towards strategy consulting. It was all game, and it was like, okay, the pressure was real, but I think the experience was even more real. And, you know, what made the difference working together was really the team. And what I still carry on till today is actually leaning into each other's strengths. So with how diverse the MBA cohort is, really, you have to learn to lean into each other's strengths and also stay grounded during stressful and tense moments. And that comes in very handy in my work today. And Also then ensuring how everyone is supported along the way. And, to me, I think leadership, that's what I kind of gained a lot from this 1 week there. It's about leading the team and everyone being a leader as well and feeling inclusive and included in it. It's not really about driving the performance. Sure, it was, but I think it's also about creating that psychological safety, keeping the morale high, and making sure that no one got left behind. These are some of the great lessons that I apply daily now. And it goes from managing your cross-functional teams or stakeholder alignment in my current role. I'd say that this experience taught me to lead with empathy, resilience, and clarity. And that's something you definitely take off from the MBA.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Commissioner. Those are some lovely thoughts. Thank you very much. Luke, can I actually just ask you how the professors support in the day? Because I think for me, when the first time I traveled with the group, that was one of the things that actually really stood out for me.
Yeah, well, Kathy actually was our mentor in that, and she played a huge role. Our client was also doing a market entry strategy. They were looking at entering America, and the international consulting project. It's sort of a dry run for the capstone project. You're in the same team, or at least we were in the same team as we were for our capstone. So kind of it was a great opportunity to sort of go back to the professor and sort of say, here's the problem that we're having on a given day. How would you advise that we deal with it? And those were sort of when having got that from her, those were lessons that we then took into our capstone that really helped us get through kind of difficult moments, and we hit roadblocks in the capstone. So that was that was very valuable from that point of view. And it was also, we could, like that, like you mentioned, it's at the end of the MBA, so we've done all of our strategy modules and our a module on presenting. We've studied teamwork and all that, so it all kind of came together and sort of became very real when you're doing it in sort of real time for a real client. And the support of the professor there just really sort of helped boost our outcome. I thought we did very well on that, actually, and the company ended up asking would we keep working for them.
Yeah, I was actually in the room when you made your presentation. I don't know if you remember, you're probably so nervous you probably couldn't see who was in the audience watching. Now that you've explained to me what you did on your GNAM week, actually, I could see that you were actually bringing aspects of that into that strategy that you actually presented to that client.
Yeah, absolutely. We were actually terrified going in. It did feel very, very real. And we put a huge amount of work into it. And I think the module on, or the workshop on consulting, the whole part about building the relationship with the client, and sort of that really informed our day-to-day dealing with the company that we were dealing with in Portugal. That was really, really valuable and really great. And a lot of the lessons that I take from that, I mean, I still sort of using in my current role. So no, it was brilliant. That was definitely one of the highlights, as well as Berkeley being in Portugal was one of the highlights of the MBA for me. And it was a great feeling. I remember once we got to the end of the presentation, we were delighted with ourselves.
Excellent. So Dan, you have a lot to look forward to for the end of May when you head off on your international consulting project. So I hope you've got some good notes from this evening. So without further ado, Sinead, can I ask you, are there any questions for our panelists about the international experience that you'd like to actually put to them at this stage?
Well, we've had some really interesting questions, and thank you to everybody Mairead and myself have been madly in the background answering questions on lots of different things. So just, first of all, I was only just going to say very quickly is that a few people had asked about the schedule for the MBA program. So I put the links in for the curriculum on both the full-time and the EMBA into the chat. And in that section on the website, all the information is there for the executive MBA in terms of the block module weekends for the next 2 years. So anybody joining us in August has all of their dates for their on-site campus stays. There is extra few days, but that's all explained on the website. And the full-time program outlines all of the subjects that are covered right across the whole year. So there was one very interesting question from Dexter, and it came in from somebody else anonymously as well. But just Dexter was wondering how well the UCD MBA internationally is recognised for graduates to get jobs in countries outside of Ireland, in different parts of Europe and also in the USA.
Okay, yeah, super question. Well, I would say in the first instance, an MBA is an internationally recognized qualification. So, you know, no one is ever going to ask you in an interview process, what is an MBA? So that is the first thing. The UCD Smurfit School is the #1 school in Ireland. And as I said, global rankings have us, I'll say, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the top 100 consistently for the last 20, 25 plus years. And this year, our full-time MBA program is ranked 73 in the world, you know, so that really does put it in context. And then the EMBA program, if I'm not mistaken, Sinead, is ranked 83.
Yeah.
So, you know, that points to the, I would say, the durability of the MBA as a thing in itself. And then particularly if you're going to do an MBA in Ireland, and I would say, if you compare us actually to business schools in the UK also, we are ranked at #5. And there are quite a number of leading business schools in the UK, as you can imagine. So all in all, I would say, yes, it does travel and it does have credibility. So thanks for that, Dexter.
Sorry, can I just interject there, Adele? I have just recently, I came across a student who lived in a different part of Ireland in Galway. And actually, I can tell you a couple of stories. And he was asking, he would prefer to do it in Galway for logistical reasons. But basically, his employer is based in Paris, or he was going for a job, should I say, in Paris. And they advised him that if he was going to do it in Smurfit. But the other thing I will tell you is that there's 2 ladies that I enrolled last summer, and their employers were requesting them to do an MBA because, and they were sponsoring it, they were paying for it. Because they were taking over different roles. And again, they weren't based in Dublin, and logistically it would have suited them to do it elsewhere potentially. And they also, at that time, they were doing the MBA, so it's actually 2 years ago, they had to do a GMAT and an EA, and it was coming close to when the enrollments were closing. And if basically one of the employers was based in the United States, didn't come from Ireland at all, and the CEO said to her that they were happy to pay for it, but she had to go to Smurfit. And it was just, at the time, a little bit more inconvenient for her to do that, but she's obviously really delighted subsequently she did. So I suppose there, and similarly with the other lady, the employer was based abroad, and not recommended, told her that if they were going to pay for the program, that she had to come here. And Sebastian, that's with us tonight, sent a message earlier. He's based in Sweden, and his employer also recommended that he come to Smurfit. So they're just, from my point of view, they're just anecdotal scenarios.
Yeah.
But that shows that it carries, I suppose. That's really what I'm saying.
And just speak maybe about format. If people are wondering about traveling, a number of our EMBA students do travel to Dublin to actually take the executive MBA. They come up on Thursday evenings, and we have negotiated deals with hotels. And then you're on campus at 8:30 on Friday morning until 6:30, and again on Saturday morning from 8:30 to 6:30. And that's once a month. So it is possible. People do come from all corners of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and indeed overseas to actually complete the executive MBA. As the title says, the full-time MBA is full-time, and the guys will attest to that. So it is sort of 8:30 on a Monday morning to 5, you know, some days are lighter than others, but there are lots of co-curricular things happening. But the advantage is that you do complete the MBA in 12 months. Would anyone got another question, Sinead, before I go to the panel on any closing thoughts?
Just, I suppose I might just ask Mairead just maybe to clarify again. There has been a number of questions in relation to the GMAT, just in, again, just asking what kind of a cutoff there is for it, what is it required for the full time? Is it required for the MBA? So maybe just to clarify that once again for people.
Yeah. So you want to do that, Mairead, or do you want me
Yeah,
to?
it's probably just easier, Adele.
Yeah.
So basically, the policy changed in the school last year. The dean even decided that there was no need for the MBA students to have to do the GMAT exam or the executive assessment, because, as I said earlier, the value that they're bringing is the experience that they've had to date, and passing an entrance exam doesn't diminish the quality of the students because they still have to meet very strict criteria. So that's, however, if for any reason you want to apply for the MBA and you don't have an undergraduate degree, you can do the GMAT or the EA then just to qualify you, and that's absolutely fine. In terms of the full-time program, we do still require a GMAT or an EA. However, and we've had lots of questions on this evening, we do offer some GMAT waivers. We consider each application on a case-by-case basis. People are asking, look, what's the criteria? It really depends on the application, but what I will say is you need to have a very, a stellar CV, essentially. Adele, would you agree with that in terms of?
Yeah, and and we're not, and we don't do it because we don't look for the GMAT just for any reason. Really, what we want to ensure is that when you come to class, that you are going to be able to contribute to the classroom experience, but most importantly, have a very good learning experience yourself. Okay, so we don't want people to come to the program that are not going to be able to keep up the pace. So in the first trimester alone, there are some significant modules: financial reporting, accounting, etc., etc. And it becomes very difficult if you're not able to keep up. So in the case where we see a CV where we may have a concern about people's ability to actually acquit themselves and to be comfortable in the classroom, we will ask you to do a GMAT, but it is for your own sake that we do that. And Dan, you might be able to jump in here and just give people a kind of a level that we're currently operating at in the full-time MBA. It moves at pace, and it is, it's quite full on because it is 1 year.
Definitely, and I'm just realizing now that I'm actually going to miss it, if you believe it.
Oh,
So, yeah, but I totally agree with you, and I think the class contribution is so important, either from your previous experience or from your previous studies. And I think this is so valuable for the program itself, but also for the class, because we're able to build on each other's thoughts and together with the lecturer to actually have a very, very interesting class. So yeah, there are a lot of learnings and takeaways out of this.
Right. All right. Okay, so Sinead, have we covered questions, do you think, comprehensively for our audience this evening?
Yes, absolutely. We've gone back to a lot of people. There was a lot of queries in terms of work experience, some English requirements, GMAT in particular. They were kind of the key questions. There was a lot of those. So Mairead was busy answering back to different people.
One last question, Sinead. A lady has asked why she's an IT professional with 10 years experience. Why should she do an MBA rather than a master's, like in iCloud technology? The basic answer to that is that you can do a master's. A master's is much more knowledge-based. You become an expert in an area. So you'll be an iCloud expert, absolutely. An MBA is a much more broad-ranging degree. Technically, it's a level 10 qualification, and a master's is a level 9. It's a globally recognized qualification, as we've discussed, and it's got an international reputation. So that's the difference. It develops more your skills. It develops your critical thinking skills. It develops your broader knowledge. There's a lot more peer-to-peer learning. So there's a lot of personal development in the MBA, as well as actual academic learning. So that's the main difference between that and then becoming a specialist in a specific area, be it a technical area or a financial area, etc. So I hope that answers. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So at this point, I think I'm going to close the webinar, but I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists, to Mary, to Kamuta, to Dan, and to Luke. And thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you very much to my colleagues Sinead and Luca and Mairead for answering all of those questions in the background for us. And to my marketing colleagues for keeping us all on track and for helping us setting up the webinar as always. Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your time. And if you'd like to follow up with anyone in particular, Mairead is probably your first port of call, or indeed you can connect with me in LinkedIn and send me a private message, and I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as I can. So thank you, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sinead.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everybody, good evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.